Hi, my name's Richard, and in the space of 4 years, I went from producing music like this to this. I've always been involved in music. I'm a bassist. I've always played in metal bands. I played flute and alto saxophone in my school concert band. I actually took exams on alto saxophone a long time ago. So I've always been involved in music, and I know about the musical side of music, but I wanted to get more involved in the technical side of music. And my goal from learning the technical side of audio was really to produce my own music. My opinion about doing that has changed over the last few years based on my experience of music production now and the importance of having a second pair of ears and a second opinion on what you've been producing. Like everyone, I started looking at YouTube videos, trying to understand what I needed to do, what I needed to learn, tried to learn from a lot of videos. There's a lot of extremely good tutorials out there. I'm not saying there's not. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of misleading videos out there and people trying to sell you the next best compressor, the next best EQ, etc. Yeah, I fell for it. I bought some plugins specifically because I thought it was going to improve my music. Don't do it. All compressors work pretty much the same, all EQs work pretty much the same, all saturation plugins work very similar. Some differences, of course, some are better than others, but don't be fooled by it. Even your stock plugins, in fact I might make a video on doing a song just on stock plugins to prove a point. So what I found from doing YouTube tutorials was it was quite overwhelming trying to understand where to start. I was trying to do certain things, I was trying to follow certain moves they were making in the video on my own music, which not suitable for the specific stuff I was doing. You know, just because they chose an EQ setting for their kick drum, it didn't necessarily mean that it had been the solution for what I was doing, but I was trying to copy what they were doing without really understanding it. I just needed a more structured approach to my learning, and yeah, it was my wife who convinced me to do an audio engineering course. She encouraged me to do it. I did some research, and one of the ones I was investigating was the HOFA College. I was living in Germany at the time, HOFA based in Germany, and yeah, seemed a good fit. I liked what they were offering, so I signed up to it. It was also during the pandemic I signed up for this course, so of course at that time there was no option for face-to-face learning anywhere. So the online course with HOFA seemed a good solution for me and a good fit, so yep, I signed up for it. So the course I signed up for at that time was called HOFA Complete. It comprised a basic module, it comprised the pro module as they called it, and then 3 short courses as well. Just to stress, HOFA have fairly recently revised their online campus, so the course I signed up for has been refreshed, and their offering is now a little bit different compared to how it was at that time when I signed up. So just be aware that what I'm talking about now might not necessarily be available should you sign up today, but I still want to talk about my experience, so hopefully it will maybe give you some guidance if you're considering the HOFA courses. So the HOFA basic module I really liked. It was, as the name suggests, it was a very basic introduction to some very key topics. So from doing some of the research I'd done, some of the YouTube tutorials I'd done, I understood a little bit about EQs, a little bit about compressors, but not to a level that I could really say that I understood what was going on with them. I really liked the HOFA basic course because it really introduced me to a lot of topics that I'd heard of, kind of familiar with, and just gave me a little bit more of an indication about them without going into the specifics. Again, the basic module, you get a certificate at the end of it called Audio Assistant, which essentially means that you understand what's going on without really being able to master some of the tools that you use in an audio environment. Due to copyright, I don't think I can actually show you the content from the course, but I have made a few notes about the kind of topics that were covered during this HOFA basic course. So it was really a basic introduction to concepts like monitoring, room acoustics, recording, using a digital audio workstation, DAW, understanding about the frequency spectrum, how to use EQs, how to use compressors, how to use effects like reverbs, delays, choruses, flanges, and even some music theory basics. So I quite like that. And at the end of each chapter, there were 6 chapters in there, and there was a practice mix that you could submit. So they gave you some tracks that you could put together, and you could mix it yourself. So of course they don't start you on a complex project to mix for the first few, but the complexity gradually increased at the end of each chapter. So I really liked the HOFA Basic course, and honestly this gave me the best guidance for what I needed at that time. And the HOFA Basic was an incredibly good introduction for what I wanted to do, and I could then start understanding a little bit more about what I'd seen in other YouTube videos. Again, I didn't have a complete understanding about these concepts and the tools that I was using, why certain decisions were being made with them. But I really liked the way that it gave me that kind of structured approach that I needed at that time. So that was the HOFA Basic, which I completed in around 2 or 3 months, I believe. I think you're supposed to complete it in 6 months, but I was excited and I was keen, so I went quite fast on that one. So yeah, take your time. So the Pro course went into a lot more detail about the things that have been briefly covered in the Basic course. So went into more details about topics like recording, mixing, mastering, signal flow, and each chapter was more orientated around a certain area or a certain instrument. So for example, there was one course that was quite heavily orientated about drums, so that covered miking technique, which is a big thing in drum recording. It covered string instruments in one chapter, it covered guitars in one chapter, so electric, acoustics, how to mic them, how to deal with them in a mix situation, and I really liked that. There was one chapter about speech and vocals, and one chapter that was dedicated to mastering, so I really liked that it built from chapter to chapter and introduced more concept on each one. There was a practice mix available at the end of each chapter, so you had the option, if I remember right, on the Pro course, you could submit a total of 4 mixes for analysis, if I remember correct. So even though there were 12 chapters in the Pro course, you could only submit 4 songs for a mix analysis, which was a shame because the analysis that they gave was really good. They gave you supportive but constructive advice about how to improve your mix, what you could have done better. They gave you some screenshots about how they approached the same one. So I really liked that, but yeah, I'd have liked to have had a bit more feedback on my mixes, I think, so they did more analysis would have been good. But yeah, this was a great way to build on some basic knowledge that we got from the Basic course, so yeah, I really liked that. A lot of information, so the Pro course I believe was supposed to take 18 months. I completed it in about 14 months, I think, if I remember correct. And again, I was very excited going through it, and I probably did it too fast. Maybe I missed some things because I did it too fast, but that was, from my side. And also part of the HOFA Complete course, there were 3 small modules on vocals, mastering and electronic music. So the vocal one was quite helpful for me because I record our singer in my band. So the vocal one gave some good advice on that one. It covered the recording side, it covered mixing, so how to deal with it in a mix situation. It also covered vocal editing, however, it only covered it from the sense of fine-tuning an already near-perfect performance. I'd have liked to have seen a bit more heavy editing on vocals when it's needed. I once heard that David Bowie could go into a studio and nail a recording within 1 or 2 takes, which, amazing if it's true, but working with smaller artists on a lower budget who can't spend a whole day in a studio with a vocal coach, the reality is that you're going to have to do some editing, and I'd have liked to have seen a bit more about that on the vocal course, but apart from that, it's good. The mastering course, again, talked about some of the concepts when it comes to mastering music. It gave a bit of background about the history of mastering, so I talked about when mastering purely related to vinyl, and gave you some hints about how to deal with mastering, again with a practice mix in there. I'd like to visit this one again now, I think, because in the last few years I've not really done too much with mastering. Maybe by doing a refresher I can learn a few things again, but yeah, that was my experience on the mastering course. And then the electronic music module as well, which was not purely about electronic dance music and things like that. Of course, a lot of that stuff it talked about dealing with like sub bass and things like that. But I found this one more interesting than I expected because it covered more of the creative aspects like sampling and sound shaping. So it was actually quite interesting. Not a style of music I get involved in, not a style of music I particularly enjoy as a music listener, but yeah, it was fun. And you had a practice mix on that one where they encouraged you to really be creative, and yeah, it was good fun. So that was actually my experience about the course itself. Of course, there are some other things we need to talk about here. The price, these courses aren't cheap, but they're not as expensive as going to a face-to-face audio school. Face-to-face audio school, of course, you have access to a physical person as a tutor. With HOFA, you do have access to the tutors, you just have to send them an email, and they're normally quite good at responding within 1 or 2 days, which I really liked. They gave me some good advice on live music when it came to in-ear monitoring and some problems we were having. They gave me some good advice on acoustic treatment for my studio room and our vocal booth when I've emailed them. So the email support is quite good, but it's not the same as having a face-to-face tutor who you can actually sit with and go through things with. I'll let you do your own research about the cost part of this. I know that their pricing changes, so they have some special offers and some special discounts, and then they give their plugins away for free sometimes, or they have some offers where they give you a free set of headphones if you sign up to their courses. So do your own research on the cost. I'm also fully aware that the value of the cost of these courses is different and relative to wherever in the world you are. I'm quite fortunate that I live in the United Kingdom now, so the cost of the HOFA courses in relation to my income is very different to say I was living in another part of the world. If you're a member of HOFA College, you have access to live tutorials that they run. I think it's every 2 or 3 weeks they have a live tutorial covering different topics. So some of them I found more useful than others, to be honest, and I really liked the one they did on mixing drums, for example, one they did on mixing vocals. They brought in guest producers for some of their live tutorials, which I really like. They talk about their processes, you can answer questions, you can do it on a chat. Usually what they do is they make the first part of the tutorial available on YouTube for a wider audience, and then they have part that's specifically for the HOFA online campus members. They've done a couple of sessions about metal music, which I really liked. They've had sessions on mixing dance music, mixing orchestral music, trailer type music. Was an interesting one recently. So these tutorials are stored on a server, so you can access these at any time. So that's a really good reference sometimes. I've actually watched a few of these back recently, and I still find some nice hints and tips in these tutorials now. The practice mixes are quite good. They give you a good opportunity to test some of the things that they've taught you about in the course. The style of music is quite varied, so as I mentioned, I plan on working primarily in the field of metal and hard rock, orchestral music to a certain extent. There's not been many metal songs, to be honest. Not necessarily saying that's a bad thing to make you a more varied producer, having experience working in other genres, but some of the songs they used for the practice mixes were not particularly good. It made it a little bit irritating to work with, so kind of reduced motivation to work with it, but hey, that's the reality, I guess. If you're going to be a music producer, you're probably going to have to accept songs that you may not necessarily like on a personal level, but yeah. So I'd have liked to have had more variation on the practice mixes to incorporate more hard rock and metal, and yeah, that would be my only comment on the practice mixes. As I mentioned previously, I really liked the analysis that they sent you back on the practice mixes. They gave you some really good hints about how to improve your own mix. They told you about what areas worked well, what areas maybe needed some attention. And as I mentioned, they also gave you screenshots and some feedback about how they approached the same mix. So that was quite nice. When it comes to the actual content itself, yeah, I liked it. A lot of the content was written with some good explanations and some good pictures in there. They had some audio examples in there, some video examples in there to go through things. As a learner, I struggle when it comes to a full page of text, if I'm honest. So only from my learning perspective, I'd have liked to have had a bit more video content in there, I think, but that's just my personal opinion. HOFA as a company also make some very good plugins. They normally give you access to all of their plugins during the course. The cynic in me suggests that they want you to learn using their plugins so that you buy them later, but sometimes they give you them free of charge when you sign up to the course anyway, depending on when you sign up to it. Personally, I'm still using the HOFA plugins. I like them, so a lot of my workflow is based around using these. But what I liked is they also reference third-party plugins as well, so they're not necessarily just using the HOFA plugins, which is good. Again, compressor settings, EQ settings, they're pretty similar regardless of which plugin you use, but I actually liked that they were a little bit more independent about what they were using in some of the examples, so that's good. And particularly when they use guest producers on their tutorials, so they're also using third-party plugins that are not from HOFA. If you're a student with HOFA College, you get access to some good discounts. So if you want to buy licenses for their own plugins, I think some small percentage discount if you buy HOFA's acoustic modules. Some of the plugin manufacturers like FabFilter, they had discounts for Steinberg, there were some discounts, and Avid if you want to buy Pro Tools, etc. So they were quite nice to have. Something to be aware of, if you do investigate the HOFA colleges, be prepared. You will get spammed with advertising. I think every third YouTube video I watch is an advert for HOFA College, even though I've done the course. I'm still getting adverts from them, so be aware, you will receive the adverts. So where am I now in my audio journey? Since doing the online courses at HOFA, I've started working with my first couple of artists now. I was working with an overseas artist, mixing his songs for him. So I now have my first portfolio references on Spotify now, which is really nice. I was working with an artist in London a couple of years ago for helping him record his demo. So I did some drum recordings for him, I did some acoustic guitar recordings for him. And that was really good because it's not something I ever envisaged doing. I never saw the point of recording a live drum kit. I thought it was more hassle than it was worth. But actually it was good fun, placing microphones in places and trying out different things, trying different microphones. So I really enjoyed that actually. To a certain extent, I'm still working on my own music, but that's really more for portfolio work. And for my band, I play in a symphonic metal band. I'm doing the recording sessions myself with other members. However, I'm still having our music produced externally. This brings me on to what I was alluding to earlier, that when you're working on your own music, you become so heavily involved, especially when you've done all the recording sessions yourself, you've done the edits yourself. You find that you're too close to it, and it's really good getting a second opinion, because there's times I've found when something sounds correct to me because I've kind of got used to it, but in reality it's not correct. I value the thoughts of an external person to tell me when something doesn't sound good or when something needs re-recording. So for now, I'm not working on my own music. It's great being able to pick up music from an artist when you've not been involved and then start working on it. That works quite well. It's also been nice that one of the artists I've worked with, I've actually been able to listen to his song and give a couple of creative recommendations that he was really grateful for, and worked really well for the song. So it's really nice working on music from that perspective as well. Recently I actually enrolled on one of the HOFA short courses for live sound engineering. Whilst I don't have the intention to work as a live sound engineer, I do actually find it useful having a bit of background information on that. In my band we have a lot of technical equipment on stage. We have a playback rig with backing tracks, we have a click track, in-ear monitoring on stage, so it's nice being able to try speak the same language as the sound engineer at the venue, if that makes sense. So that was the reason I enrolled on that particular course. I'm finding it quite interesting so far, so yeah, we'll see how we go. I'm about halfway through that one at the moment. So yeah, that's my experience learning with HOFA College. I hope it gave you a bit of an insight as to my experience. I'm not being paid to do this video, I'm not getting any kind of sponsorship, there's no affiliate links in there or anything. This is just my experience because I struggled finding any truly independent reviews for the HOFA College when I was signing up, so hope that helps. If you've got any questions, please feel free to put them in the comments. I'll get back to you when I can. And yeah, in the meantime, good luck with your own audio journey, and thanks for watching.